The story begins with a schoolboy yawning in the middle of a noisy classroom. His name was Saejima Nagi. As he drifted off to sleep, a mysterious voice called out to him and gave him blessings. When Nagi woke up, he found himself underwater and started to panic. As he tried to swim to the surface, he realized he didn't have arms, legs, or even a body. Looking at a fish nearby, he suddenly understood that he had become the water itself. At that moment, a rush of knowledge filled his mind. Nagi realized he was in another world and had been reincarnated as a great water spirit, now taking the form of a lake. Days passed, and Nagi kept wondering if he had died and why he had been reborn as a lake. At first it felt strange, but he started to enjoy his new life. For someone who liked to relax and do nothing, being a lake was perfect. The animals around him looked unusual, like rabbits with horns. On top of that, the water of his lake could heal injuries and cure illnesses, so animals often visited him. One day, 2 human children appeared. It was the first time Nagi had seen humans in this world. The children had cuts on their bodies, and Nagi wondered why they weren't using the medicinal herbs in their baskets. Then the kids knelt by the lake and prayed to the Great Spirit to heal their sick mother. Nagi realized they had collected the herbs for her. Suddenly, a hungry winged wolf appeared. Nagi quickly saved the children by hitting the wolf with a splash of water. He was surprised he could control the water and wondered if it was because he was the Great Spirit. He even managed to create a human form for himself. Nagi asked the kids if they were okay and noticed his clothes looked strange. He changed them to fit the world he was in, then approached the children with a kind smile, feeling glad that they could understand each other. When they started crying, he hugged them to comfort them. After the kids calmed down, they asked who Nagi was. At first, Nagi hesitated but then introduced himself by his real name. The kids said their names were Lumina and Narsha. They thanked him for helping them and asked if he was a spirit. Nagi admitted he was the spirit of the lake. He touched Narsha's wound and healed it. Narsha said he was amazing. When Lumina saw Narsha was healed, she asked Nagi to help their mother too. Nagi smiled calmly and agreed, but he told them not to tell anyone about him. The siblings promised to keep it a secret. Nagi borrowed Narsha's water container and filled it with water that had healing powers. He said it would cure their mother's illness. Before the siblings left, Nagi created a spirit to protect them since the forest was dangerous. He named it Lu. It seemed that great spirits could create familiars with the same power as themselves. Although the siblings couldn't see Lu, Lumina said she could sense a mysterious presence like Nagi's. Nagi asked them to be friends with Lu and to keep it a secret too. He sent them on their way and reminded them to be careful. Afterward, Nagi felt tired. He undid his human form and sank into the water. He felt strangely good as he rested. Later, Nagi was woken up by someone calling for a spirit. A group of wounded, dark-skinned, long-eared people appeared asking for help. A man held his dying son in his arms and said humans were hunting them. He said they had followed Nagi's presence to find safety. The man's wife knelt and begged Nagi to save their son. Suddenly, a blob of water rose from the lake and entered the boy's mouth. The boy healed immediately and woke up. His parents were shocked and thanked Nagi for his kindness. Nagi realized they were dark elves and remembered reading about them before. He searched his mind's library and found a book about their kind. He learned that dark elves had a strong connection with spirits. Just like other elves, most of them could see and hear spirits, which helped them get along with other elf races. However, their unique looks and abilities made humans fear them. Humans believed they used evil powers and thought they were part of the demon race. Because of this, humans treated them as enemies, even though dark elves also fought against the demon race. Nagi thought for a moment and then asked the dark elves if they could hear him. The 3 were shocked and bowed low before the lake. Nagi noticed their difficult situation and told them they could live near the lake if they promised not to pollute the water. The dark elves hesitated and asked if it was really okay. Nagi said he didn't want them wandering around getting hurt or sick. He told them not to work for him but to focus on taking care of themselves instead. Grateful, the dark elves thanked Nagi for his kindness. Nagi asked for their names. The father was Etna, the wife was Lina, and their son was Helio. Nagi then introduced himself as the Great Spirit of the Lake. That was how a family of dark elves came to live beside Nagi. After a month, Nagi began to wonder how the siblings were doing. He asked Lu about the situation. Lu shared that the siblings' mother had been cured, which made Nagi happy. Nagi admitted to himself that he still didn't fully understand why he had become the Great Spirit of Water. However, he realized he could use his powers to help people who were struggling. He promised himself to help anyone he could. As Nagi reached his hand toward the sunlight without thinking, he suddenly materialized and surfaced out of the lake. Etna was shocked to see him. Nagi asked if Etna recognized him, and Etna said he couldn't mistake such a powerful presence. Nagi asked how his wife and son were doing. Etna said they were fine, with no illnesses or injuries. He also mentioned that he was tending to some fields he had planted. The land was fertile, and he expected to grow plenty of tasty vegetables. Just as Nagi was feeling happy for them, he suddenly heard someone calling for help. He asked Etna if he heard anything, but Etna said he didn't. Nagi felt uneasy as the voice continued, pleading for the Great Spirit's help. A child cried out asking for help to save his only family. Then a magic circle appeared beneath Nagi and began pulling him in. Nagi slowly opened his eyes and realized he was inside a cage. Not just any cage, it was full of children. One of the kids asked him to save someone named Ruto. Nagi wondered if the high elf child was the one who summoned him, but he soon noticed the child was a half-elf. Normally, half-elves couldn't summon spirits. Still, Nagi couldn't ignore the plea and appeared before the boy. He told the child he had answered the call and introduced himself. Nagi then asked for the child's name and what he wished for. The half-elf, Yona, asked Nagi to save his younger brother Ruto, who was dying. Yona promised he would give anything in return for saving his only family. Seeing Ruto's condition, Nagi understood why someone with healing powers like him was summoned. He also saw Yona's strong and kind heart. Deciding to help, Nagi agreed to grant his wish. A spirit contract seal appeared on Yona's hand and Nagi declared the contract complete. He began healing Ruto. Nagi didn't stop there. He also healed the other children and broke their slave collars. The children cheered in joy. Ruto slowly opened his eyes and saw his older brother. Yona thanked Nagi for saving Ruto. Although Nagi was happy to grant Yona's wish, he couldn't leave the children in such a horrible place. He worried about how to care for all of them but decided he couldn't abandon them. He told the children they would escape together. A feline child asked if they could really escape, and Nagi assured them they would because he was with them. Just then, two men entered after hearing the commotion. Nagi's expression darkened as he felt the terrible emotions of disgust coming from them. The men demanded to know who he was and how he got inside. Nagi began seeing flashes of the horrible things they had done to the children. Overwhelmed by the memories and pain, he started breathing heavily. The men mocked him, asking if he was too scared to speak. Suddenly, Nagi's arm turned into water and passed through the bars, grabbing one man by the neck. The man panicked and tried to hit Nagi's arm, but Nagi's body transformed fully into water and flowed out of the cage. The frightened men asked who he was. Nagi formed massive hands out of water and asked if they would believe him if he said he was a great spirit. Before they could respond, he used the water hands to trap and spin them like a washing machine. The men were left unconscious, and Nagi found the keys to the cages. He unlocked them and told the children to come out. More men arrived, led by someone claiming that freeing the children wouldn't be easy. The leader accused Nagi of attacking a legitimate business and stealing their products. Nagi asked if abusing children counted as legitimate and corrected him, saying he was a great spirit, not a mage. The leader asked why a great spirit would help children. Nagi replied that he was there to save them from people like him. He summoned water out of nowhere and drowned the reinforcements. Nagi warned the slavers that he was the great spirit of water and could see everything they did. He threatened to kill them if they continued enslaving children. The leader was terrified and Nagi led the children out of the basement. Once outside, Nagi realized he was in a large town. Even though he wanted to go back to the lake, he didn't know where the town was. Seeing that Nagi was confused about the location, Yona apologized for bringing him here. Nagi then remembered that he needed to feed the kids. Unlike him, they were hungry. He worried about not having any money and stared at some bread. The shop owner asked if he wasn't buying anything and wanted to know who they were, since she thought it was strange to see a group of different races together. Nagi told her they had just reunited with his half-brothers, though he wondered if that was too much of a lie. The shop owner believed him and felt sorry for them. Nagi felt guilty. The shop owner then told them to eat as much as they could, but the kids hesitated to take the bread. Nagi handed some to them and said that there were good people, not just bad ones. He explained that they were lost. The shop owner told them they were in the small city of Ilus, south of the kingdom of Ruginus. Nagi realized that he had crossed into another country from the lake and it was quite far away. He asked the shop owner how he could earn money, and she suggested becoming a merchant or craftsman. But if he needed quick money, she had another idea. Nagi soon found himself at the Adventurers Guild, which the bread lady had suggested, even though it might be dangerous. After seeing the quests and rewards, Nagi agreed that it was the quickest way to earn money. An employee asked if Nagi needed something. Nagi said he wanted to take on a request. The employee told him to register first. Nagi filled out the form and wrote that he was a human mage with water magic. For now, he was registered at the lowest rank and could only take easy quests. Then someone asked people to clear the way because an injured person was being brought inside. A bald man said the elf had been attacked by a basilisk. Everyone talked about how unlucky it was to meet a basilisk. Nagi remembered that basilisks would curse wounds so they wouldn't heal. Yona asked Nagi to help the injured person. Nagi was surprised but told him to leave it to him. He remembered how he had sworn to help anyone he could. However, he didn't want to stand out too much. As a potion was being poured into the elf's mouth, Nagi secretly dropped some healing water on her too. The elf suddenly woke up, asking about the basilisk but getting confused when she saw she was inside the guild. Nagi told Yona and the kids to continue their quest to gather herbs. The bald man was happy the medicine worked, but the elf named Philly said she felt a divine presence. As she came to her senses, she felt something and said she wasn't imagining it. Outside, Nagi was gathering the kids and told them to let him know if they got hurt. Philly then stopped them. Nagi realized she was the injured person from earlier. After catching her breath, Philly asked if Nagi was the great spirit of water. Philly calmed down and asked again about Nagi's identity. Suddenly, her teammates Gand and Shaunus rushed over, telling her she needed to rest. Nagi remembered that elves were sensitive to spirits but didn't expect Philly to notice him right after recovering. Philly explained that she needed to thank the Great Spirit and her teammates believed her because she was an elf. Nagi had no choice but to admit who he was. Philly couldn't believe she had been saved by the Great Spirit. She said she would never forget the favor, but then she suddenly felt dizzy. Nagi caught her before she fell and asked if she was okay. At that moment, a man named Yushin, who was in charge of the guild, came over to thank Nagi for saving Philly and apologized for eavesdropping. He noticed the children with Nagi and suggested they talk inside the guild to discuss things further. In his office, Yushin bowed to Nagi for saving one of the guild's important adventurers. He then asked why the Great Spirit of Water was in the area. Nagi looked at Yona and explained how he had been summoned. He told them everything that had happened. Philly was happy the children were saved, but couldn't believe that a half-elf had managed to summon a great spirit. She said only high-ranking beings like high elves could summon great spirits. Yushin agreed, saying it was unheard of for a half-elf to connect with great spirits. For some reason, Yona's face looked anxious. Yushin offered a bag of coins and asked Nagi to use them for travel expenses. Nagi tried to refuse, but Yushin said it was a gift to thank him for saving Philly. He remembered that only elves with special talent for spirit magic could summon a great spirit, but he was happy that an ordinary person like him could meet one in his lifetime. The coins also showed how he felt. Nagi knew his existence was rare, but never expected to be so highly respected. Since he had no choice, Nagi accepted the money. Yushin promised to give more if Nagi ever asked. Nagi felt embarrassed but was grateful for this rare chance. He then asked for one more favor. That night, Nagi watched over the sleeping children. He was thankful to Yushin for arranging a place for them to stay. Yona walked up to him, and Nagi wondered if he couldn't sleep. Yona thanked Nagi again and said he felt bad for being a low-born person who summoned him. Nagi realized that Yona had been in a tough situation for so long that his self-esteem was low. He guessed that Philly's and Yushin's surprise must have made Yona feel anxious. Nagi patted Yona's head and told him not to apologize. He reminded him that Yona was now his summoner and contractor, and that it was thanks to him that Nagi was able to see the outside world. Hearing Nagi speak kindly, Yona couldn't help but cry. Philly's voice was heard through the gaps in the door. She apologized for waking them up so late, but explained that she had received an urgent message from the guild. Nagi opened the door and showed concern for the children. Philly and her team assured him that they would take care of them. Nagi could see they were sincere and decided to trust them. He apologized to Yona and told him that Philly and her team would look after the kids. Yona still looked worried, so Nagi told him not to worry, assuring him he would come back. He held out his pinky finger, which confused Yona. Nagi explained that it was a small gesture to keep a promise. Yona felt better and hoped Nagi would return. Nagi then headed into the woods. Despite the darkness, he could sense the presence of a basilisk. Earlier, Yushin had apologized for calling Nagi so suddenly and rudely for a consultation. Nagi knew it was about the basilisk, a dangerous monster with incredible strength and a nearly indestructible body. After hearing how Philly had been attacked by it, Nagi guessed the sudden summon was about the same monster. Yushin confirmed that scouts had found another basilisk, a female with a swollen belly. He said the two basilisks were heading toward the town, looking for a place to feed. He asked Nagi to handle them as an emergency quest, offering a 20 million reward. Yushin bowed and said Nagi was the only one who could defeat the basilisks. Nagi knew the reward would cover his travel costs, but he focused more on how many innocent lives could be at risk. He agreed to take the quest. Yushin cried and promised to make sure future generations would remember the Great Spirit's kindness to their town. Now, back in the present, Nagi watched the pair of basilisks and wondered what he should do next. One of the basilisks glared at Nagi and his hands started to turn to stone. He was surprised that a great spirit's human form could be so weak. Realizing the danger, Nagi changed into his water form. He remembered that the basilisk's evil eye didn't work on things that looked stronger. Nagi turned into a powerful eastern water dragon. The male basilisk glared at him, but Nagi started charging his dragon breath. The male basilisk tried to stop him, but it was too late. Nagi fired the dragon breath and sent the male basilisk crashing to the ground. He was impressed by how strong his attack was. The female basilisk tried to escape, but Nagi wasn't going to let it get away. He used his water to block her, forming a ball of water that trapped and drowned her. After making sure she was dead, Nagi released the water and changed back into his human form. He saw the bulging stomach of the female basilisk and patted it, remembering what Yushin had told him. Nagi felt bad about the unborn creature inside and apologized for it. Nagi was relieved the quest was finished and called over the guild member who had been watching him. The guild member was surprised, and Nagi asked him to take care of the basilisk bodies. The guild member quickly left to call for reinforcements. Nagi was surprised to see that they had stealth abilities and got ready for the retrieval. He then decided to head back home. Back in Yushin's office, Yushin thanked Nagi for saving the town and knelt before him. He gave him a reward of bags of coins and an item box in the form of a sling bag to carry the coins. Nagi was impressed that such a small bag could hold so much. Yushin then gave him a new adventurer license, making Nagi a rank 4 adventurer. Yushin explained that although Nagi deserved rank 1, his authority only allowed him to be rank 4. Nagi accepted it without hesitation. Yushin also said the guild would buy the basilisk remains and asked Nagi to wait 2 or 3 days. Nagi thanked him, but Yushin insisted they should be the ones thanking him. While waiting for the appraisal, Nagi started getting ready for his journey back to the lake. Walking back to his lodgings, Nagi couldn't stop thinking about why basilisks were appearing near the town. They usually lived far from people. He thought someone might have caused them to move, but decided he was probably overthinking. When he arrived, he noticed Philly and the kids waiting outside. Philly explained that the kids had just woken up and were eager to see him, so they decided to wait outside to greet him. Yona and the other children welcomed him warmly, which made Nagi smile. Feeling happy, he hugged all of them. He then told them to start preparing for a journey. The kids guessed they were heading to Nagi's lake and asked him about it. Nagi described the lake as a place full of nature where crops grew easily and life was simpler. He also mentioned that dark elves lived there and believed the kids would get along with them since they had been through similar struggles. As Nagi answered the kids' endless questions, Gand and Shannis encouraged Philly to speak up. Philly told Nagi she was glad he was safe. Nagi thanked her for all her help, but Philly said it was nothing compared to what they owed him. She then made a request. Philly and her team wanted to join Nagi on his journey. When Nagi asked why, Philly explained that she wanted to repay him for saving her life and hoped to help him in any way she could. Nagi asked about the other two, Shannis and Gand. They said they felt the same way and offered to repay their debt by helping save Philly and the town. The kids overheard this and were happy to know they would be joining too. Nagi noticed the kids had already started to warm up to the three. Shannis, Gand, and Philly then politely asked Nagi to accept their offer. Nagi thanked them and said he would rely on them from now on. Philly was grateful and promised to do their best to help. Later, Nagi went shopping. He bought clothes for the kids and made sure to repay the bread lady, sharing a heartfelt moment with her. Finally, he collected the payment for the basilisk. Before leaving, he thanked Yushin for seeing them off. Yushin said Nagi had been a big help and hoped he would visit again so he could give him a grand welcome. Nagi smiled and asked for a simple one, hinting he would return soon. After that, everyone got on the carriage, and once they were ready, they set off on their journey. After leaving Ilmus, their next destination was the small city of Ranan. Nagi had worried the kids might feel anxious during the journey, but he was relieved to see them full of curiosity as they watched the changing scenery. They didn't travel non-stop and often took breaks to camp and rest. Gand and Shannis used this time to teach the kids self-defense skills. Meanwhile, Nagi and Philly trained Yuno and Ruto, who showed potential for spirit magic. As they approached Rawanan, Nagi hoped they could find an inn to rest in comfort. Unfortunately, every inn they visited turned them away. Their timing was unlucky, and no rooms were available. Gand and Shannis returned to Nagi and Philly with the news that all the inns were full. The only option left was a manor for rent. Yona suggested they camp outside, but Nagi insisted on finding shelter, especially for the kids. As they discussed their options, someone approached them, noticing their trouble. Philly and the others quickly moved to shield Nagi and the children. However, the person turned out to be just a boy. Nagi explained they were struggling to find an inn and apologized for being cautious because they had children traveling with them. The boy locked eyes with Yuno, then glanced at a nearby inn's sign. He said he knew a good place and offered to guide them. Philly hesitated about following him, but Nagi pointed out they had no better choice. He assured everyone he didn't sense anything suspicious about the boy and promised to protect them if anything went wrong. Philly and the others were impressed by Nagi's confidence and vowed to protect him and the kids at all costs. Nagi, however, asked them not to go to such extremes. He also reminded them to watch how they spoke to him, as he was hiding his identity as a spirit. Philly agreed and promised to show the proper level of respect. It was already getting dark when Nagi noted how far they had traveled to the outskirts of town. The boy leading them asked them to follow him and greeted a woman named Marina. She was reading a book to some children and welcomed the boy back. Marina greeted Nagi's group as well. The boy explained that Nagi's group didn't have a place to stay, and Marina offered them shelter for the night. Nagi asked if it was okay to accommodate such a large group, but Marina reassured him, saying they had plenty of bedding. She explained the place was an orphanage run by followers of the Sera religion. Nagi noticed some of the children hiding behind Marina, looking cautious, and felt bad about it. Still, they needed a place to stay. He wanted to make sure the kids felt safe, so he crouched down to their eye level and apologized for startling them. He explained that they were adventurers escorting some children to a safe home. The kids didn't respond right away. Then Yona stepped forward and told them Nagi and his group were good people, and promised they would be kind guests. Nagi was relieved to see Yona helping. The children nodded to each other and decided to let them stay. Philly patted Yona's head and praised his courage. After that, the adults asked for Marina's permission. She agreed and invited them inside. Nagi handed her a pouch of coins as payment, but she hesitated to take it. Nagi insisted it was only fair. Marina finally accepted and promised to put extra effort into dinner. Philly offered to help her. Later, a feast was served. Nagi noticed how skilled Marina was at preparing the meal and asked if it was a typical amount of food. Marina explained that they used to have more staff, but many had left to work elsewhere. Philly asked about the Sera religion, and Marina explained that its teachings focused on helping the weak and those in need. Running the orphanage was part of their mission. She also mentioned their belief in the goddess of water and the will of the water spirit king, which inspired their acts of kindness. Hearing this, Nagi froze in place as he was a great water spirit himself. Philly praised the cause as wonderful while Nagi suddenly felt uneasy. The children suddenly announced they were done eating. Marina encouraged them to have more, but they wanted to save some food for when others returned. One child exclaimed he would work harder in the future so Marina and the others could have an easier life. Marina was moved by their determination and thanked them, saying their feelings made her happy. Nagi silently watched the touching moment unfold. That night, Marina followed her usual routine of praying to the goddess of water and the water spirit king. Suddenly, she heard someone call her name. When she opened her eyes, a ball of water floated in front of her, greeting her. Of course, the water ball was Nagi, and he introduced himself as the Great Spirit of Water. Nagi said he was impressed by Marina's dedication. To help her and the children, Nagi gave her a spirit stone that could be exchanged for money. Marina was confused and wondered if she was dreaming. She couldn't believe she was meeting the Great Water Spirit and seeing something so amazing. Nagi explained that his wish was for the children to be happy, and asked her to sell the stone. Marina thanked him and asked how she could repay him. Nagi told her to keep protecting and caring for the children, saying that would be enough. Marina promised to do so. The next morning, Nagi thanked Marina for letting them stay and encouraged her to keep doing her best. Marina, feeling happier, promised she would. Philly noticed how much brighter Marina seemed. The children asked if they would leave soon, but Nagi explained they needed to gather information before deciding their next steps. Gand and Shauna said they also needed to check the weather and see if any monsters had been spotted to ensure everyone's safety. When Philly asked where they would stay in the meantime, Gand and Shauna said the mansion they rented would be ready later. Nagi remarked on how efficient adventurers were. At that moment, a crow landed on a branch nearby and stared at Nagi. A cold, eerie voice came from it, saying they would meet soon. Then the crow vanished into thin air, leaving Nagi unsettled and wondering what it could mean. Meanwhile, in a different place, the same crow rested on someone's shoulder. The person said they were looking forward to meeting a reincarnator from Japan. To find out if the path to the lake was safe, Nagi and Gand went to the guild to gather information. Gand mentioned how strange it was to see a black dragon flying over the nearby town of Farron. Nagi agreed, explaining that dragons, a powerful and proud race, usually avoided humans. Nagi said traveling with the kids would be dangerous, and Gand suggested staying in the town a little longer. While they were talking, someone called the adventurers to gather near the quest board. A guild worker confirmed recent reports of monsters appearing along the highways. She said the guild had finished its investigation. Clenching her teeth, she announced that these signs pointed to a monster stampede. The news made everyone nervous. The worker then asked for the adventurers' help to protect the town by forming a group to fight the monsters. Nagi and 4 other adventurers paid close attention. The worker promised a reward of 100,000 and asked for their support. Gand remarked that the situation was unexpected and asked Nagi if their group should join. Nagi decided that he and Gand would join the effort, while the others stayed behind to care for the children. Gand worried about Nagi's safety, but Nagi insisted it was the best solution. He explained that dealing with the monsters quickly would keep people safe and clear the path to the lake, solving 2 problems at once. Gand couldn't argue against Nagi's reasoning. Nagi admitted that Philly would likely try to stop him if she found out, so he planned to sign up before telling her. At the registration area, Nagi was surprised to see many adventurers, most of whom seemed like travelers. Among them, he noticed an elf adventurer staring at him intensely. To keep his identity a secret, he gestured the elf to be silent. Soon after, a beastman named Fail approached and introduced himself as a rank 4 pugilist. Nagi introduced himself as a rank 4 water mage, and his companion Gand as a rank 4 greatsword wielder. Fail asked if they were part of a team, and Nagi confirmed they were. Before they could talk more, someone told everyone to quiet down. The guildmaster, Yield, stepped forward and thanked them for registering. He said he had an important matter to discuss and warned that if anyone couldn't keep it secret, they should leave. Nobody spoke up, making it clear that everyone was staying. Yield then revealed that an Adontator, a dangerous creature, was heading toward their town. The name alone sent chills through most of the adventurers. From his mental library of knowledge, Nagi recalled that an Adontator was a massive monster classified as a subdragon species. It was known as the gluttonous demon because it left nothing behind in its path, crawling across the earth and destroying everything. Yield explained that the reconnaissance team had confirmed the Adontator was responsible for the recent increase in monster sightings. To protect the town, Yield asked the adventurers to work together to stop the creature, while the guild would prepare a defensive line. He noted that because the Adontator moved slowly, there would be time to evacuate the townspeople if it breached the defenses. However, if they couldn't stop it entirely, the town would still suffer significant damage. Guild then asked everyone to introduce themselves so they could understand each other's skills. A man named Narj went first, introducing himself as a rank 2 spearman. The next introductions were from twins, Neo, a rank 2 magic swordsman, and Luo, a rank 2 healer. After them, the nervous elf Frio introduced himself as a spear user and spirit mage. Nagi noticed that Frio seemed more fearful than impressed. Finally, Nagi introduced himself again, stating he was a rank 4 water mage. After the introduction, Yield handed out the materials and asked the group to discuss the strategy among themselves. Narj took the materials from Yield and passed them to everyone. Once everyone had them, Narj brought up the need to decide on a leader for the subjugation. The group wondered who would be suitable since the leader needed to have a high rank and be able to unite everyone. Many were confident in their skills but not in their ability to lead. For some reason, Frio thought Nagi might take the role. At that moment, Fail suggested that Narj should be the leader since he was already managing things well. Everyone agreed with Fail. Narj asked if they were sure, and Nagi immediately supported the decision, which made Frio agree as well. With the leader decided, Narj began discussing the strategy. Nagi realized it would be his first time fighting alongside others and hoped he wouldn't cause any trouble. For now, he planned to act like an ordinary adventurer unless something required him to stand out. After the meeting, the group started to leave. Just then, Frio approached Nagi and respectfully expressed how glad he was to meet him. Nagi remembered his name and told him not to be so formal since they were comrades in the subjugation. Frio insisted he couldn't do that and said he wanted to host Nagi at his home. Nagi thanked him for the offer but explained that people were waiting for him. Frio replied that they were welcome too. When Nagi mentioned they were quite a large group, Frio confidently said his estate could accommodate everyone. Soon after, Philly found out what had happened and scolded Gand for not stopping Nagi. Gand said he had tried. Nagi then asked Philly to take care of the kids. While they were talking, there was a knock at the door. The visitors were Frio and Fail. Nagi introduced them to Philly, explaining that Frio had come to escort them to his estate. However, Nagi was confused about why Fail was there too. Fail just gave a big smile. Since Frio didn't seem to mind, Nagi decided not to question it. That night, after the kids were settled, Nagi thanked Frio for letting them stay. Frio said it was nothing, especially since meeting someone as important as Nagi was an honor. Fail then asked why Frio was showing so much respect to Nagi when they had only just met. Nagi noticed Frio was having a hard time explaining and he could tell Fail didn't mean any harm. Nagi then introduced himself formally as the Great Spirit of Water. He explained how he had met the kids and why he was staying in town. His goal was to reach the lake. Hearing Nagi's story, Frio couldn't help but cry, touched by his kindness. Philly agreed with Frio. Fail was also surprised to learn Nagi's true identity. It now made sense to him why Nagi felt so mysterious when they first met in the guild. Fail admitted he had been curious and decided to follow them. To help Nagi reach the lake without trouble, Fail wished for the mission's success. After that, the group spent the next few days planning and preparing for the mission. When the day finally came, Philly and the kids told them to stay safe. Nagi, along with Gand, Frio, and Fail, set off, promising to return safely. Soon after, everyone arrived at the defensive lines. The mages worked together to build walls using the earth around them. Then it was Nagi's turn. He tapped the ground and water shot up like a fountain, turning the area in front into a marshland. He asked if it could have been better, but Narj said it was good enough. It was a trap that took advantage of the naturally clay-like soil in the area. Nagi remembered that this type of soil was similar to what was used for the castle walls. The other mages also prepared magic circles around the area. Narj reminded everyone to stay alert since the monster was very strong. According to the scouts' report, the battle would happen the next morning, so Narj told everyone to rest well. After they were dismissed, someone praised Nagi's magic. It was the twins, Neo and Luo, who said it was amazing how he created a marshland so quickly. Nagi thanked them for the compliment. Luo mentioned they wanted to speak with Nagi after the battle because there was someone who wanted to meet him. When Nagi asked for more details, the twins said they couldn't explain yet. They bowed and assured him that this person really wanted to see him. Nagi felt their trust in this person and sensed no bad intentions at all. He agreed to the meeting and the twins thanked him. Nagi wondered who the person could be, but he decided to focus on the Adontator for now. The next morning, the ground shook as the Adontator got closer. Everyone could see it coming. The monster then easily destroyed the wall they prepared and revealed the marshland Nagi had created. It stepped into the muddy water, and seeing its feet submerged into the marshland, Narj gave the signal. Nagi then dried up the water, hardening the soil like cement to trap the Adontator in place. Everyone cheered, but the Adontator began smashing the ground to free itself. The mages were shocked and decided to activate the explosive mines. The mines exploded, sending smoke everywhere, but when the smoke cleared, the monster was still unharmed. Panic spread as nothing seemed to work. Narj told everyone not to lose hope and ordered the magic team to keep attacking to slow it down. However, the recent shockwaves damaged parts of their barrier, and pieces of debris started falling. Nagi noticed this and quickly used a large water shield to protect everyone. Seeing Nagi hold up the shield, Narj commanded the melee fighters to attack the monster. Armed with swords and spears, the fighters launched a relentless assault on the giant beast. For Nagi, it was the first time witnessing adventurers in battle. The angry Adontator let out a loud roar, hurting everyone around it. Everyone, except Nagi, was knocked out. As Nagi tried to protect and heal everyone by covering them with water, Frio got back up and decided to summon a golem to buy some time. The large earth golem tackled the Adontator. With one strong punch, the Adontator was knocked to the ground, but that was the last attack the golem could manage and it disappeared. Nagi thanked the unconscious Frio for his help and healed him. Then he turned into water and became a water dragon, just like during the fight with the basilisks. Without hesitation, he used the usual dragon breath and fired it at the monster. The Adontator was totally annihilated, and Nagi returned to his human form. He made it rain, and the water healed everyone instantly. They were amazed to see they were fully healed. After seeing the Adontator dead, they were confused about what had just happened. Nagi then created something on this palm and showed them a magic stone and said the Great Spirit of Water appeared after he prayed to it. Narj agreed there was no other explanation, and everyone thanked Nagi. Nagi asked the others who his identity to be silent. After the battle, they left the cleanup to the guild and celebrated with a feast, thanking each other for their efforts. The next morning, Fail asked where Gand was, and Nagi explained that Gand had gotten hungover from drinking too much during the celebration. He apologized to Fail, saying he had something to do. Just then, the twins appeared and said their master was fine with someone else being there. Nagi realized they were talking about their master. They said their master was a great person. They soon went to the edge of the town, where there was a lone cabin. The twins said it was a gate and that it led to their master's home. Inside, an old man greeted Nagi and said he was happy to meet the Great Spirit of Water. Surprisingly, he also knew Nagi's full name, Saejima Nagi. When the old man greeted Nagi by his full name in Japanese, Nagi became flustered and alert. The old man then introduced himself. He wrote strange symbols in the air, which quickly changed into Japanese characters. He formally introduced himself as Agatsuma Yuki. Nagi was so shocked to hear and see Japanese again that he shouted in surprise. It took him a moment to notice Fail nearby. Agatsuma suggested they take their time to talk. He then told the twin children to enjoy themselves with Fail. The two immediately focused on Fail's bushy tail and picked him up like a toy before running outside. Once they were alone, Agatsuma used magic to make chairs, a table, and a tea set appear. He invited Nagi to sit and have tea while they talked. Nagi noticed that the old man seemed playful. Curious, he asked if Agatsuma was really Japanese. Agatsuma explained that he had come to this world around 300 years ago and became someone known as the Sage of Foresight. Nagi was shocked to hear that. Agatsuma went on to explain that long ago, a regular office worker from Japan like him suddenly appeared in this world just like Nagi. Even Agatsuma couldn't believe it when it first happened. He then asked Nagi what year it had been on Earth before he arrived in this world. Nagi thought for a moment before answering, 2033. Hearing that, Agatsuma shared that he had arrived in this world in 2024. Confused, Nagi asked what he meant. If Agatsuma came in 2024, then he should have only been in this world for about 10 years, not 300. Agatsuma explained it was due to a distortion in time and space. He realized that time in this world flowed much faster than on Earth. Although Nagi found it confusing, he nodded and agreed to continue the conversation. Agatsuma was surprised when he learned that Nagi had been reincarnated as a great spirit. He said Nagi was the strongest Japanese reincarnator he had seen so far. Nagi then realized there were more people from Japan in this new world. Agatsuma explained that he was the third Japanese person to be reincarnated there. He said these reincarnations happened once every few decades, and that people like them were seen as agents of change in this world. Agatsuma, who called himself the Sage of Foresight, explained that he had seen many future events with his powers. He revealed that he had predicted Nagi's arrival many years ago. As they spoke, a familiar crow landed on Agatsuma's hand. He said he had tried to contact Nagi through the bird because he had wanted to meet him for a long time. Agatsuma admitted he had hoped to communicate better, but the message came through poorly, like a bad phone signal. Nagi recognized the crow and understood why its voice had sounded strange before. Now that Nagi saw the bird being petted, he realized it actually looked cute. Agatsuma apologized for the poor communication, but Nagi told him not to worry. Hearing familiar words like smartphone made Nagi feel more certain that Agatsuma was a reincarnator like him. Nagi then asked about the other Japanese reincarnator. Agatsuma explained that there were two more. The first one, Takashi Matoba, had already passed away. In his time, he was a respected hero and became the first king of the Takasul Kingdom. Nagi was amazed to learn that someone from their world had founded an entire nation. When Nagi asked about the second person, Agatsuma sighed and said that the last reincarnator was currently relaxing on a remote island in the south. Hearing this, Nagi could easily imagine that person being laid back and carefree. Agatsuma promised that he would introduce them to each other in the future. The old man became serious and said he had something important to ask Nagi, and it was about the twins, Neo and Luo. He explained that there was once a country called Lunasia, where magic flourished. 100 years ago, the people there had taken care of him. He remembered it as a peaceful country. Nagi noticed that the old man spoke in the past tense, and Agatsuma revealed that Lunasia was destroyed 18 years ago. What surprised Nagi even more was when Agatsuma revealed that Neo and Luo were the surviving princes of Lunasia. Agatsuma explained that an old friend had entrusted the twins to him. Since they had a natural talent for magic, he had been teaching them while raising them. However, the twins couldn't use magic on their own. Their unique nature caused their magic to combine when they were together, forming a complete power. When that happened, the amount of magic they could control increased greatly, allowing them to use large-scale magic that would normally require several people. Nagi found this ability interesting but wondered what Agatsuma wanted from him. Agatsuma asked Nagi to take the twins with him. He explained that the twins had been raised in isolation, so their social skills were poor. Nagi agreed that this made sense after watching the twins play with Fail. Agatsuma then shared a vision he had of Nagi connecting with many people in the future. He believed the twins could grow by traveling with Nagi and gaining more life experience. Bowing his head, he asked Nagi to take care of Neo and Luo. Moved by Agatsuma's sincerity, Nagi saw how much he cared for the twins. Nagi assured him it was fine to leave the twins in his care. He explained that when he came to this new world, he had decided to help anyone within his reach. Hearing this, Agatsuma looked relieved and gratefully held Nagi's hands while thanking him. He mentioned that he had already taught the twins everything he knew about magic, and they could help teach the talented children under Nagi's care. Agatsuma also suggested taking Fail along as a companion, saying he would be useful in the future. When Nagi tried to ask for more details, Agatsuma stopped him, saying it was time to move on. The twins returned looking refreshed after playing with Fail. Agatsuma reminded them about what he said earlier, that they would be leaving with Nagi. The twins lowered their heads, realizing it was time to part with their master. Agatsuma noticed their sadness and wondered why they looked that way when they could visit him anytime using their teleportation magic. The twins understood and agreed. After that, they paid their respects to Nagi. Agatsuma then asked Fail what he planned to do next. Nagi turned his attention toward them, curious about Fail's decision. Agatsuma knew Fail had his reasons for whether to follow Nagi or not. Nagi also wondered what those reasons might be, but he never sensed anything malicious from Fail. Assuming it wasn't anything bad, Nagi invited Fail to come along. Fail happily agreed, but he exclaimed that he wouldn't let the twins push him around anymore. Seeing how lively the younger ones were, Agatsuma couldn't help but smile. He knew that the Great Water Spirit was kind-hearted and would surely attract many followers in the future. He thanked Nagi again and wished him happiness on his journey. Nagi soon rejoined his group and introduced Fail, along with the twins Neo and Luo. The Beastman children in the group were excited to see an adult of their kind, while the other children were amazed by Neo and Luo's identical appearance, as they had never seen twins before. Nagi then thanked Frio for everything he had done for them. Frio humbly replied that it was nothing, saying it was an honor to serve someone like Nagi. He added that receiving a familiar from Nagi was already more than enough. Nagi explained that it was his way of showing gratitude, but he also asked Frio to send word through the spirit if anything happened, promising to return right away. Frio wished them well, and Nagi's group set off for the next town. Meanwhile, deep in a forest, a dark dragon was captured by humans. Enraged, the dragon cursed them, vowing not to forgive them and swearing to destroy them all. After traveling for a month, Nagi's group reached Mariol, a city close to where his brother lived. They decided to stay in the town for about 10 days to rest and get ready for the next part of their journey. On their first night in Mariol, Nagi sensed a dark dragon nearby. He got up and looked around, but the others were still asleep and the streets outside were empty. A strong, inhuman power filled the air. As powerful as a high-level spirit, Nagi felt as if something was calling to him. When he focused his senses, he noticed the presence was full of pain and hatred. Though curious, Nagi knew he couldn't leave the children unprotected. Since he had better control over his powers now, he summoned a high-level spirit to guard them while he was gone. The spirit appeared and greeted him politely. Nagi gave her the name Suiko, and asked her to watch over everyone until he returned. After that, he left to investigate the strange presence. As soon as Nagi took to the sky, he felt something unusual coming from a mansion nearby. The strange energy seemed to be coming from underground. Without hesitation, Nagi dived into the ground, moving through it as if it were water. He found several layers beneath the surface, including a magical barrier, but it didn't stop him. Nagi easily broke through it. At the deepest part of the underground space, Nagi saw something shocking. A huge dark dragon chained down with magical bindings. The dragon's eyes opened slowly, sensing Nagi's presence. Feeling Nagi's power, the dragon assumed Nagi was a great spirit. Nagi introduced himself as the Great Water Spirit and asked the dragon for his name. The dragon replied that his name was Diazotus, the Dark Dragon. He thanked Nagi for coming and shared his sorrow. Diazotus said he could no longer spread his wings or fly through the skies. With a heavy heart, he asked Nagi to hear his final wish. Diazotus said he once lived in the deepest parts of the demon abyss. He admitted he had been careless, thinking no humans could reach that place. But one day while he was hunting, humans stole his child, which was still an egg. Nagi guessed that Diazotus had come to take the egg back, and the dragon confirmed it. However, it seemed the humans had planned for this. They wanted him to chase after the egg. Diazotus explained that curse spells had damaged his body, leaving him weak and powerless. He described himself as a dragon waiting to die. That was why he called for someone like Nagi. He begged Nagi to save his child from the humans, who he called arrogant. Nagi created a ball of water in his hand and claimed he could heal Diazotus. The dragon said it was useless, but Nagi ignored him and placed the water ball in his mouth. As Diazotus showed him the areas damaged by the curse, his body suddenly healed. The scars and wounds disappeared completely. Nagi stood proudly, showing off his healing powers. Diazotus was shocked. He couldn't believe his cursed wounds had healed. Without waiting, Nagi touched the chains wrapped around Diazotus. The magic on the chains disappeared right away. Diazotus's eyes widened in disbelief as Nagi pulled out all the chains in one move. Nagi then asked if he had any other injuries, but Diazotus said he was already more than grateful. Nagi suggested they leave the cave, explaining that he had phased through the ground to get inside. Diazotus said he had been brought there by teleportation magic. He then lifted Nagi onto his back and told him to hold on tight. With a powerful blast of dragon breath, Diazotus broke through the underground cave, creating a large opening. He flew out and soared into the sky. Nagi warned him to be careful, saying his companions were nearby. He asked Diazotus not to destroy the town if possible. Diazotus reassured him, saying his child was being kept in a palace far from the town. He promised he wouldn't cause any trouble there. Finally, Diazotus expressed his deep gratitude and said he owed Nagi a great debt. Nagi saw that Diazotus had calmed down, but he still seemed tense and reckless. Nagi worried that the dragon might charge straight at the enemy and get hurt. Since he was already involved, Nagi offered to help. Diazotus, however, was concerned that Nagi might regret leaving his companions behind. But Nagi made it clear he didn't want to see Diazotus captured again. He also pointed out that it would be safer because he could change his appearance, and he suggested they finish their mission before sunrise. Diazotus gratefully accepted his help. When they reached the front of the palace, Diazotus confirmed that his child was inside, but he grew anxious, fearing they would be detected if they got too close. Nagi assured him he would handle that part, and Diazotus trusted him. Nagi then leapt from Diazotus's back, focusing on the task ahead. He could sense a strong human presence inside the palace. To avoid being noticed, he transformed himself into a drop of water and slipped through the cracks in the walls. As Nagi moved through the gaps, he followed the familiar presence similar to Diazotus. Eventually, he reached a heavily guarded room with large doors. It was a treasury. Inside, he found 2 dragon eggs. Both radiated a strong presence, but Nagi couldn't tell which one belonged to dozes. Seeing the eggs, he thought about how dozes had suffered, and he feared these children would endure the same pain. Determined to protect them, he decided to save both eggs. Unlike spirits, the eggs couldn't pass through walls and guards were patrolling outside. Nagi had no choice but to use his power to open a hole in the palace wall. The soldiers panicked when they saw water flooding out of the treasury. Dozes immediately realized it was Nagi's doing. Hugging both eggs tightly, Nagi flew toward Dozes and apologized for making him wait. Dozes thanked him for saving his egg and promised to repay him without fail. Seeing his child safe made Dozes emotional and he almost cried. Nagi then asked about the other egg, which looked different. He explained that he couldn't leave it behind, so he brought both eggs. Dozes agreed to take the second egg, saying it wasn't something humans could understand. He explained that it was the egg of the black sacred beast, Narsh, a creature said to bring wealth and fame. Nagi gently patted the second egg and felt a strange sensation like his power was being absorbed. He wondered what kind of creature would hatch from it. After that, Dozes offered to take Nagi back to the town. They landed in a nearby forest where Dozes thanked Nagi again for retrieving his egg and asked how he could repay him. Nagi said he had an idea. After riding on Dozes' back earlier, he thought of a favor he wanted to ask. The next morning, Fail asked what was going on in town, noticing how busy and chaotic everything was. Nagi, pretending to be confused, said he didn't know either. Even though he understood the situation, he only commented on how noisy the town had become and suggested they leave earlier than planned. He told the group he wanted to start preparing immediately for their trip to the lake. He also told them to forget about getting the checkpoint permit. Philly was concerned and asked if that was really okay since they wouldn't be able to cross the borders without the permit. Nagi told her not to worry and to trust him. Even though she looked unsure, Philly agreed. Nagi then gave everyone tasks to do. Fail and the others were told to buy food that would last for a month. Luo and Neo's group were tasked with getting building materials because Nagi wanted to construct a place for them all to live near the lake. Enough space for 3 large houses. Philly, Yona, and the rest were asked to buy clothes for everyone. When Philly asked where Nagi was going, he said he planned to find skilled builders since building houses would be difficult for them to do on their own. After thanking everyone in advance, Nagi left. As he wandered through town, Nagi thought about hiring carpenters through the guild. He figured they could find someone experienced to help them build the houses by the lake. However, his thoughts were interrupted when he felt a surge of dark energy filled with malice. He stopped walking and focused. He sensed something strange coming from the dark energy. Nagi concentrated harder, sharpening his senses. He could feel the presence of people nearby, and they seemed to be crying for help. He heard thoughts of despair. One person wondered if this was the end after putting their trust in someone. Another questioned if their suffering was because they were demi-humans, treated as slaves. Nagi's expression turned serious when he heard the word slave. He touched the ground and noticed they were being kept underground. He wondered if these people had been unfairly captured and forced into slavery. The memory of Yona begging him for help flashed through his mind. Without hesitation, Nagi dove into the ground. He transformed into a water ball and floated through the underground hallways. As he passed by rooms with iron bars, he thought it might be a prison. Most of the energy in the place felt stagnant, leading him to believe the prisoners were mostly criminals. But he noticed something important. There were no children, just like when he helped Yona and the others. However, Nagi quickly realized there were demi-humans locked up among the prisoners. From their presence, he could tell they hadn't committed any crimes. He saw dwarves, an elf, and a few beastmen. One elf suddenly stood up wide-eyed and called out to Nagi, referring to him as the Great Spirit. The elf desperately begged him for help. Others heard the elf and were equally shocked. Soon, more prisoners started calling out to Nagi, pleading for mercy. A slave trader appeared and told them to stop the nonsense. Without a word, Nagi floated toward the man and drowned him. Once the trader was unconscious, Nagi returned to his human form. He calmly told the prisoners to stay quiet because someone was coming. Then he grabbed the iron bars and opened the elf's cell. Nagi then turned his gaze to the dwarves. One of them, angry and frustrated, asked what he wanted. The dwarf claimed that even if they were freed, they had nowhere to go and told Nagi to leave them alone. Nagi asked if they would want to leave if they had a new place to live. The dwarf laughed bitterly and said they would, but only because a great spirit was already causing trouble. Nagi quickly apologized and said that wasn't his intention. The dwarf stared at him in disbelief, confused by how a great spirit was acting so much like a human. He then admitted that he had lied a bit earlier. He hated staying in such a dark, filthy place. However, he explained that they had lost all hope. Their tools, forges, and even their homeland had been taken from them. Hearing this, Nagi told them they could come live by his lake. He explained that he had already taken in orphan children and wanted to help them too. With ease, he broke the iron bars holding the dwarves captive and invited them to join him. He encouraged them to rebuild a new homeland, even if they had lost the old one. Nagi then admitted he had selfish reasons as well. He wanted to build large houses and needed skilled workers. The dwarves, moved by his kindness, thanked him sincerely. Seeing this, the beastmen also asked if they could come along. Nagi smiled and agreed without hesitation, welcoming them all. The other prisoners begged Nagi to take them along. They kept promising to be helpful, but their dark and evil presence made Nagi uncomfortable. The dwarf warned Nagi not to get involved with them, explaining that they were dangerous criminals forced into labor. One of the prisoners tried to convince Nagi not to listen to the dwarf, but Nagi wasn't interested in freeing them. As Nagi glanced at the prisoners, he noticed one man who seemed different. Although he carried a heavy burden, there was something pure about him that Nagi couldn't ignore. He decided to approach the man. Turning into water, Nagi slipped through the iron bars of the cell, surprising the prisoners. Nagi walked up to the man and asked why he was there. He could tell the man wasn't a criminal. The man on the verge of tears explained his story. He once had a best friend from his hometown, his only friend. But that friend betrayed him, stole all his money, and framed him for a crime he didn't commit. Despite everything, the man admitted he couldn't bring himself to hate his friend. Hearing this, Nagi felt certain the man didn't deserve to be in the prison. He told the man to stand up, then broke his chains and opened the cell door. As they left, the other prisoners tried to follow. But Nagi summoned a wall of water, blocking their path. He fixed the iron bars back in place, leaving the others trapped. Frustrated, the prisoners shouted at Nagi, demanding to know why he wouldn't free them too. Nagi calmly told them they were in prison because of their own actions. He explained he couldn't save them and suggested they take responsibility and atone for their crimes. Outside, the dwarves thanked Nagi for saving them and promised to build as many houses as he needed in his new homeland. The beastmen, who no longer had a home, anxiously asked if they could go with Nagi and work at the lake. They offered to repay his kindness by helping him. Nagi turned to the elf and the innocent man, both of whom also had nowhere to go. They nodded nervously, and Nagi understood their situation. He decided to introduce them to his companions right away. Seeing their worried expressions, Nagi reassured them, saying there was no need to be anxious. He explained that everyone in their group had come together under different circumstances, but they were all good people. Later, Philly almost burst into tears after hearing their story. Seeing her reaction, Nagi realized he had nothing to worry about. Philly then gave him a report. The collapse from the previous night had released poisonous miasma into the air, which was causing problems throughout the town. She explained that merchants were packing up and leaving in a hurry to escape before things got worse. Hearing this, Nagi realized they needed to finish shopping quickly. Philly also pointed out that their group had grown and they would need to come up with a new plan in the morning. Nagi agreed and decided to handle the shopping himself later. The next morning, Nagi noticed fewer people walking around town. It wasn't just the streets that looked emptier. His supply of gold coins had also shrunk after all the shopping. While walking through the market, he suddenly heard a woman calling out that her shop was about to close. She announced that they had limited stock left at special prices. As someone familiar with bargain sales, Nagi couldn't resist checking out the deals. The woman noticed Nagi approaching her shop and greeted him warmly. Nagi asked if he could take his time browsing, and the woman agreed. As he looked around, he saw many items ranging from everyday tools to objects that seemed magical. Suddenly, a crystal ball caught his attention as it began to glow brightly. The woman was shocked to see it shine and explained that it was a magical tool that reacted to the presence of spirits. Nagi felt nervous when he heard this. The woman, fascinated by the rare item, explained that the crystal ball would glow even brighter when near a strong spirit. To test it, she brought the crystal closer to Nagi, and it lit up like the sun. Surprised, she pulled it back and tried again, each time getting the same result. Nagi, feeling cornered, finally confessed that he was actually a great spirit, a powerful one at that. The revelation overwhelmed the woman and she fainted from shock. After a while, the woman woke up and Nagi felt relieved. She apologized for not realizing who he was, but couldn't help wondering why a great spirit would visit a human shop. Nagi apologized for startling her and explained his situation. He shared that he planned to relocate people to his lake and would need supplies for them. The woman quickly understood that managing the daily needs of a large group wouldn't be easy. Self-sufficiency can only go so far. Nagi agreed with her point, realizing it would be difficult to negotiate with nearby villages for supplies. Seeing this, the woman made a decision. She offered to handle the logistics for him. Nagi was confused by her suggestion at first. The woman then revealed that she was planning to close her shop soon anyway. She had opened it to learn more about trading, but the town's current state made it hard to stay in business. She would have to move out sooner or later. When Nagi asked if she meant she wanted to join him, the woman smiled and said she believed their meeting was fate. If she was going to leave town, she wanted to give it her all. She formally introduced herself as Almina and asked Nagi to let her come along. As a bonus, she offered to bring all the items from her shop with her, saying it would be a great deal for him. Nagi could see that Almina was a skilled merchant who thought things through carefully. The next day, the merchant Almina officially joined Nagi's group and was introduced to the other members. As planned, they left Mariol in a large carriage. Along the way, Philly grew worried about the direction they were heading through the nearby forest. She felt they were moving too far from the borders. Nagi assured her that the spot they had just reached was fine because he was meeting someone there. Philly wondered if more people were planning to move to the lake, but Nagi told her that wasn't the case. Suddenly, something familiar flew above them. The group panicked as Nagi's friend appeared. With a deep, chilling voice, Dozes apologized to Nagi for making him wait. Everyone was stunned to see a real dark dragon standing in front of them. Fail nervously asked if this was the same dragon that had been spotted near the town recently. Nagi told everyone to stay calm and explained that Dozes was not a threat. He said the dragon had also suffered after his child was taken by humans. Dozes apologized to the group for scaring them and introduced himself. He explained that he had come to help Nagi as a way of repaying him for saving his life and his child. When the two powerful beings checked on the others, they saw that everyone else had been knocked unconscious and lying on the ground. Nagi realized they had been knocked out by the shockwave. He quickly summoned water from thin air, creating a large bubble that wrapped around the people and the carriage. The water then enclosed Dozes, and Nagi told him to take off while they still had time. Dozes understood and flew high into the sky. As they rose, he asked if Nagi was okay with the shaking. Nagi said he was fine. Surprisingly, Yona was still awake and said he was okay too. Nagi was shocked that Yona hadn't fainted like the others. Yona explained that he wasn't scared of Dozes because he could tell the creature had kind eyes. Then he asked about the people who lived in Nagi's lake. Nagi told him there was a family of 3 dark elves living there, including a boy named Helio. He mentioned that Helio was the same age as Yona and was sure they would get along well. Yona hoped they could become friends, just as Nagi said. Nagi promised that they would. Dozes noticed something and asked if the lake in front of them was Nagi's. Nagi looked and confirmed that it was. Yona stared in amazement at the large, beautiful lake. He felt happy to finally see Nagi's lake after so long. Dozes landed safely nearby. He reminded Nagi that he had kept his promise, and Nagi thanked him for the ride. Dozes flapped his wings and wished they would meet again. Nagi told him to call if anything happened. After that, Dozes flew away and Nagi turned to wake up the others. As everyone slowly woke up and started unloading their belongings, Nagi noticed some bushes moving nearby. Suddenly, Etna and Helio appeared. They both seemed surprised to see Nagi again after so much time had passed. Nagi smiled, glad to see them in good health. Etna was happy to see that his lord was safe and said they had been waiting for his return all this time. Etna asked where Nagi had been. Nagi told him he would explain everything later, but first he wanted to introduce some people. Helio glanced at the newcomers and froze when he realized some of them were humans. His face grew pale and he started sweating nervously. Nagi quickly reassured him, saying he would explain everything soon. He also told the Dark Elves that the humans with him were trustworthy and wouldn't cause any harm. Gan stepped forward and greeted Etna first. He explained that he came after forming a bond with others who, like him, had been saved by Nagi. Shanas also introduced himself in a warm, friendly manner. The man they had seen earlier, who appeared innocent and shy, introduced himself as Folix and explained that Nagi had rescued him from slave traders. Almina introduced herself as someone who wanted to help make everyone's lives better. Nagi then told Etna that he wanted these people to live near the lake as well and asked for his thoughts. Etna thanked Nagi for his concern but reminded him that he was the one who originally owned the lake. He also noted that the new arrivals seemed to be people Nagi trusted, which reassured him. Etna expressed hope that they could all live together and help each other. After acknowledging their long journey, Etna promised to introduce them to his wife and invite them to his home for tea. Nagi thanked Etna for welcoming them. Etna in turn said that everyone seemed kind and that he looked forward to the future they would share together. Yona approached Helio and introduced himself and his little brother Rudo. Seeing how friendly they were, Helio greeted them back. Yona then offered to introduce them to the other kids. Nagi smiled as he watched them get to know each other. Luo and Neo also noticed a new fluffy friend. Fail and the dwarves were getting along well too. Nagi was happy that everyone seemed to be getting along. Since there were more people around now, Nagi realized that monsters might come. He used his powers to create a barrier around the lake area, making sure the monsters couldn't get through. He said the barrier would keep any threats away. Just then, Etna called out to him, saying they would hold a feast to celebrate his return and welcome everyone. Nagi agreed and offered to help. That night, everyone had a good time at the celebration. Philly talked with the dark elf couple, and the new elf, a dwarf, and the female beastkin had a deep conversation while drinking. Nagi smiled as he saw how friendly everyone was with each other. Yona then walked over to him and Nagi asked if he was full. Yona said he was, and Helio called out to him. Nagi was happy to see the two become friends just as he hoped. Yona said that everyone else also became close to Helio. He mentioned that they had already promised to fish together. He asked if it was okay to fish in the lake. Nagi told them not to fish too much and to stay within the barrier he had set up. Yona thanked Nagi for always taking care of them and working hard for their safety. Nagi asked why Yona was being so formal and said that Yona's thanks usually came through the contract mark, meaning he could feel it directly. Yona said he just wanted to properly thank him. Nagi smiled and told Yona to go to Helio, who had been calling him. Yona then left. Nagi finally felt tired and walked away from everyone. He realized he had been pushing himself too hard lately. He stepped into the lake, decided to rest, and fell asleep. Nagi then let go of his human form and became part of the lake. Later, Nagi heard Yona's voice asking him to wake up. Slowly, he regained consciousness and wondered if it was morning. He got up from the water, formed his human body, and greeted Yona with a good morning, saying that the previous night had been fun. However, the Yona in front of him looked different from what he remembered. Yona hugged him, happy to see that Nagi had finally woken up. Confused, Nagi asked if Yona had suddenly gotten taller overnight. Yona said it wasn't sudden, 3 years had passed. Nagi couldn't believe he had treated 3 years of sleep like it was just one night. Nagi broke into a cold sweat and asked if he had really been asleep for 3 years. Yona, with tears in his eyes, confirmed it. He explained that Nagi used to go off on his own before and he had been worried because Nagi was gone for so long. Yona wondered if something bad had happened and thought maybe it was because Nagi had worked too hard for their sake. Nagi then remembered the time when Yona had summoned him. He had fought huge monsters and healed many people. He realized that he had used up too much of his power, and the barrier around the lake must have been what finally drained him. Yona said he always believed he would see Nagi again. This time, he welcomed him back with a smile. Nagi felt happy to see how much Yona had grown over the years. He remembered when Yona used to only reach his waist. Suddenly, Yona said he had something to show Nagi. He asked him to close his eyes, then took Nagi's hand and led him somewhere. After walking for a while, Yona told Nagi to open his eyes. When Nagi did, he saw a large mansion in front of him. He was shocked because it was much bigger than the old house he had in his past life. Feeling uneasy, he said it was too grand for someone like him. Yona explained that if Nagi had known about the house earlier, he might have hesitated to accept it. He then shared that everyone worked hard to build a place where Nagi could feel at home. Grateful, Nagi thanked Yona and the others, promising to take good care of the house. Yona offered to show him around inside. As they walked through the mansion, Nagi felt overwhelmed by the beautiful interior. Yona explained that the dwarves worked hard to make it perfect. While exploring, Nagi noticed something familiar. The egg he had saved before. He quickly went over to it, hugging it tightly and apologizing for leaving it alone for 3 years. As he gently touched the egg, he realized it had a heartbeat. Relieved, Nagi smiled, happy to know the egg was still safe. Yona told him that everyone had taken turns warming the egg and talking to it during his absence. Nagi thanked him and the others, feeling guilty for causing trouble during the 3 years he was gone. Yona reassured him, saying that everyone had worked together and managed just fine. Nagi noticed that the barrier looked fine, but he still asked if anyone had been attacked by monsters. Yona told him that everything was under control since Philly and the others had dealt with the monsters, and Suiko continued to patrol the area. Hearing Suiko's name surprised Nagi, as he had almost forgotten about her. Suiko soon appeared and greeted her father. She said she had been waiting for him to wake up. Nagi apologized for being away for so long, but Suiko said it was fine because Yona had stayed with her. Yona explained that she had asked Suiko to protect the people of the lake, and Suiko agreed to do so. Nagi thought Yona was incredible. He remembered the contract they made, but what stood out to him was how Yona managed to summon a high-ranking spirit like Suiko and even give her instructions. It was clear to Nagi that Yona's spirit magic had greatly improved. He realized that it wasn't just Yona's height that had changed. He had grown stronger in other ways too. Just then, Nagi heard a noise outside and wondered what was going on. Yona noticed that everyone had gathered. When the door opened, familiar faces greeted Nagi. He was surprised by the sudden welcome. Feeling a bit guilty, he apologized for disappearing without saying anything. Philly told him not to worry and said they were just happy he woke up safely. Gan suggested they hold a feast to celebrate Nagi's recovery and hoped to see him there later. Nagi wondered when everyone had gathered. Yona admitted that he had told them to come while he was on his way to the lake. The others, however, wanted it to be a surprise for Nagi. Philly looked surprised that Yona gave it away. Yona then asked if he could invite the rest of the kids since they had a lot to share with Nagi. Nagi agreed and said he was looking forward to seeing everyone again. Soon after, a community of dark elves gathered to welcome Nagi back. Etna greeted him excitedly, happy to see him return. Nagi thanked Etna for hosting another feast and asked why it seemed grander than before. Etna explained that new dark elves had settled near the lake and helped work the fields, which led to a bigger harvest. Nagi noticed there were more people than before. Etna apologized for not informing him about the new residents. Nagi reassured him, saying there was no need to worry. The barrier he had set up would prevent anyone with bad intentions from entering, so if everyone chose to live there peacefully, he had no reason to object. Etna became emotional and started crying, moved by Nagi's kindness. While they talked, an elderly dark elf approached them and offered a bowl of vegetable salad. She seemed nervous, worried it might not suit Nagi's taste. However, Nagi happily told her it was delicious and praised how fresh the vegetables were. The elderly elf smiled, relieved, and invited Nagi to visit the field sometime. Nagi was suddenly told by someone to visit the smithy. It was Jarud, the dwarf leader whom Nagi had once saved. Jarud greeted him and said it had been a while. When Nagi heard that the dwarves had helped build his house, he thanked Jarud for their efforts. However, Jarud told him there was no need to thank them, as he had made a promise to help. Since then, the dwarves have built many houses, and it had been a rewarding experience for them. Etna added that it was thanks to Jarud and the dwarves that the place had grown into a proper town. Nagi felt happy seeing how much progress they had made over the past 3 years and was eager to explore the town. He was glad to see everyone living peacefully. The next day, Nagi visited the fields where dark elves were busy working. Yona appeared and offered to guide him around. As he walked through the area, Nagi was impressed by how much the town had grown. Almina then called out to him with a cheerful greeting and introduced her shop. She explained that she bought monsters hunted by Philly and the others, along with vegetables harvested from the fields. The goods were then traded with nearby villages, which allowed her shop to offer a variety of items. Angie also noticed how happy everyone seemed with their lives. Almina thanked Nagi for giving her the chance to run the shop, especially since the monsters in the nearby forest were valuable, with their materials selling for high prices. Nagi felt happy to see Almina doing well and thriving in her business. Nagi excused himself as he made his way to the smithy. When they arrived, they saw Jarud, who looked happy to meet both Nagi and Yona. Nagi was impressed by the craftsmanship of the smithy, which had been built by the dwarves. Jarud explained that Nagi had given him permission to do whatever he needed, so he took the initiative to build it. Jarud then showed Nagi a sword he had crafted and asked him to take a look. Nagi admired the dagger's beautiful design. Jarud nodded and explained that the area was rich in mineral resources. While digging underground, they had even discovered mithril. Nagi was surprised to hear about this rare, fantasy-like ore. Afterward, Jarud asked Nagi for a favor. He wanted Nagi to give his blessing to the sword. Since great spirits could bless objects connected to their domain, and the mithril had been mined from Nagi's land, Jarud believed Nagi's blessing would be possible. Without hesitation, Nagi poured his power into the sword. It floated in midair, glowing with magic as his energy surrounded it. The sword was finally finished, and the dwarves' eyes widened as they inspected it. Jarud announced that it had become a spirit sword. Yona, curious, asked what that meant. Jarud explained that the spirit sword was one of the 10 greatest weapons in the world, and that only those recognized by the spirits could wield it. Nagi then suggested that Yona try holding the sword. Yona took the sword by the hilt, and as soon as he did, waves of water appeared around him. He thought it looked beautiful, but after a moment, he felt dizzy. Nagi told him he needed to practice with the sword to get used to its power. Suddenly, a kid named Luna burst into the smithy, shouting Nagi's name. Jarud scolded her for being so loud. Luna quickly apologized, saying she had something urgent to report. She said someone outside claimed to be a messenger from a dragon and wanted to meet Nagi. Hearing this, Nagi couldn't help but feel confused. Nagi quickly went outside to greet the messenger. The man, who had a single horn on his forehead, greeted him back. Nagi asked if he was the messenger from the Dragonkin village. The man introduced himself as Donif and said he had come to see Nagi, following the final request of the Dark Dragon Lord, Dozes. Nagi was surprised and asked what Donif meant by final request. Donif looked serious and stayed quiet for a moment. Nagi invited him inside to share more details, and Donif thanked him for the offer. At Nagi's house, he asked Danif to explain what happened. Danif then told him that after Nagi had rescued Dozes, the dragon took refuge in the abyss of eternal darkness near the Dragonkin village. Since his original home was no longer safe, Dozes stayed peacefully with the Dragonkin for a while. However, one day, someone claiming to be a messenger from the kingdom of Luganes came to the village. They insulted Dozes, calling him an evil dragon, and demanded that the Dragonkin show them where he was hiding. The Dragonkin refused to give him up. At first, the messengers left without causing trouble, but when they returned, they brought an army with them. The soldiers attacked the Dragonkin village, calling them savages for protecting the so-called evil dragon. At first, the elite dragon knights managed to protect their village from invaders. However, when the kingdom's heroes arrived, the battle quickly turned against the Dragonkin. As more of the village was destroyed, Dozes appeared. With a powerful breath, he wiped out the invading human army. The Dragonkin cheered, relieved by his victory, but Dozes warned them not to let their guard down. He believed the humans would return to attack again. Determined to end the threat, Dozes decided to take matters into his own hands. He planned to eliminate the humans before they could regroup. The Dragonkin tried to stop him, calling his plan reckless, but Dozes insisted he understood the risks. He had one request for them. If he didn't return, they were to take his child to Nagi Lake, where the Great Spirit could protect him. Dozes was certain his child would be safe under the Great Spirit's care. Donif, one of the Dragonkin, began sharing more about Dozes' last words when a noise came from the basket he was carrying. Nagi guessed what it was, and Donif confirmed it. He introduced Dozes' son, Balajas. The baby dragon floated gently in the air before landing in Nagi's lap. Balajas allowed Nagi to touch him, showing that he trusted him. As Nagi held the baby dragon, he became emotional, remembering the moment Dozes reunited with the egg. He then asked Donif what had happened to Dozes' body. Donif explained that the Dragonkin had buried him properly. Nagi, with a serious expression, thanked them for standing by Dozes and mourning his loss. He promised to take care of Dozes' child. Before leaving, Nagi told Donif to ask for his help if the village ever needed it. Donif expressed his gratitude and asked Nagi to look after their prince. After saying goodbye to Donif, Nagi looked at Balajas and promised to raise him to be someone as great as his father. A week passed and Balajas settled in well in the town. While playing with the kids, Nagi called out to him. Nagi was happy that the dragon was getting along with everyone. It was time to hunt, so the two went into the forest. Nagi had a way of helping Balajas grow stronger. As they walked down a path, a slime came out of the bushes. Nagi was surprised to see it again. The friendly slime had started showing up whenever Balajas was hunting, and it helped clean up the mess he made. The slime was cute, and they could communicate with it. However, Balajas still treated it like a snack. As they walked on, they heard some noises nearby. They peeked out from the bushes and saw a hippogriff. The monster was startled and tried to attack first, but Balajas' headbutt was strong enough to stop it. The hippogriff let out a loud shriek. For some reason, Balajas couldn't move. Seeing this, Nagi checked his mental library and realized that hippogriffs had a paralyzing effect with their cries. However, knowing Balajas' strength, Nagi believed the dragon would be fine. The slime, worried, asked Nagi to help, but Nagi told it not to worry. He promised he would step in if things got dangerous. Something crashed to the ground. Balajas was stuck on the ground, unable to move. The hippogriff tried to bite off Balajas' head, and Nagi tried to help. But at that moment, Balajas' eyes looked fierce, and Nagi was shocked as a dark sphere surrounded them. Surprised, Nagi wondered if it was Balajas' power. He focused and realized the entire area was filled with Balajas' presence. Power worthy of a dark dragon. Nagi could hear Balajas growling. The slime got scared and held on. Nagi realized the darkness around them blocked all light, and anyone who got lost in it would lose their sense of self. He knew that any normal creature would be afraid inside it. Then the darkness vanished and feathers floated in the air. In front of Nagi stood a hurt Balajas looking down at the dead hippogriff. Balajas proudly stared at Nagi before collapsing to the ground. Nagi rushed to help and used his healing powers to fully heal Balajas from his injuries and exhaustion. He praised Balajas for his good work, and Balajas felt happy about the praise. Nagi then told Balajas to eat his fill. After Balajas and the slime ate all of the hippogriff, Neo and Luo appeared. It had been a while since Nagi saw the twins. He hadn't seen them at the banquet and wondered where they went. The twins explained that they had been away helping their master with his magical research. Nagi asked if the work was finished, but the twins said no. They then said their master wanted to meet Nagi. Confused, Nagi agreed to meet him later. However, the twins insisted it should happen right then and cast a magic circle. Nagi was shocked and said they were basically kidnapping him. Soon after, Agatsuma appeared, apologizing for his disciples' actions, and said they would consider Nagi's schedule in the future. Nagi didn't mind and asked Agatsuma why he had been called. Agatsuma said he had someone to introduce. Just then, someone told Agatsuma not to explain further. Sitting arrogantly on the sofa, a man introduced himself as Mutu Hiroaki, another reincarnator from Japan, just like the twins. After hearing Mutu introduce himself, Nagi remembered the man he had imagined who was vacationing on the southern islands. Agatsuma said that Mutu was indeed the person he had in mind. Mutu then told Nagi to call him Hiromu or whatever he preferred. Nagi shook his hand and introduced himself formally. At that moment, Nagi had a thought and asked if Hiromu was not human. Hiromu, expecting this question from a great spirit, explained that while he appeared human, his true form was that of a dragon, the sacred dragon. Nagi was amazed by this. Then Balajas made a cute sound and Nagi realized the baby dragon had followed him. Hiromu asked who the little one was. Nagi introduced Balajas as Dozes' child. Hiromu was surprised and seemed to recognize the name Dozes. Nagi asked if they knew each other. Hiromu explained that Dozes had helped him in many ways and expressed surprise that Nagi had met someone like him. Seeing Nagi's sad face made Hiromu stop talking. Nagi then asked if Hiromu had not heard anything. He told Hiromu that dozes had passed away. Hiromu couldn't believe it and grabbed Nagi's shoulder, saying that it couldn't be true. Nagi apologized and confirmed that a messenger from the Dragonkin village had reported dozes' death. That was why Nagi had taken in Pelagius. Hiromu struggled to control his emotions and asked Nagi to tell him everything he knew. After hearing about dozes' situation, Hiromu found the story terrible. He asked why the kingdom of Luganus would suddenly attack the Dark Dragon. Agatsuma then stepped in, explaining how the kingdom of Luganus was planning to start a war against the Dragonkin village soon. The two reincarnates couldn't believe what they had just heard after mourning for dozes. Agatsuma went on to explain how a mansion in Mariol had collapsed, and how the royal palace's treasury had recently been destroyed. Eyewitnesses concluded that the Dark Dragon was responsible for both incidents. Using this as an excuse, the humans had defeated dozes. On top of that, to avenge the hero who died in battle, the kingdom intended to blame the village that had defended the Dark Dragon. Nagi called them ridiculous, saying the collapse and the treasury incident were caused by humans themselves. The whole problem started when humans took dozes' egg and used forbidden magic to trap and capture him. Nagi argued that neither dozes nor the Dragonkin should be blamed. Agatsuma agreed with Nagi but said this wouldn't be a simple case. He explained that forbidden magic wasn't something humans could easily control, only demons were able to handle it, and that meant something. He concluded that everything had been planned by the kingdom, with the demons pulling the strings. In this world, demons were punished for trying to rebel against the gods, using dark powers. The demons hated the gods deeply and secretly targeted other races to grow stronger. They were the true enemies of this world. Hiromu realized that Agatsuma was not blaming humans for everything. However, whether demons were involved or not, human heroes had still killed a dragon. As a dragon himself, Hiromu was very angry and wanted to show humans the danger of making enemies with dragons. Nagi saw how angry Hiromu was and admitted that he couldn't just sit by and do nothing. He didn't want to watch the village that had honored and carefully buried dozes' body be destroyed by humans. Most of all, he had promised to help the Dragonkin if anything happened to them. Hiromu was happy Nagi was helping, but Nagi made it clear he wasn't doing it for revenge. He worried that innocent people might get hurt because of the damage on the human side. Agatsuma agreed with Nagi. While the heroes and castle officials were important, he wanted to avoid harming the innocent citizens. Because of this, he asked both of them for help. He requested that they go to the Dragonkin village and help defend it from the human army attacking from the kingdom of Luganus. Since things were heading in that direction, Hiromu agreed to help. Nagi also offered his assistance. Agatsuma thanked them both. At the same time, he would use his connections to investigate the demons involved in the incident. He promised to update them as soon as he had information. Hiromu then looked at Nagi for a moment and called his attention. He realized that his anger earlier had gotten the best of him and apologized for dragging Nagi into his personal revenge. He thanked Nagi for his help and apologized again. Nagi said that he wasn't unrelated to the situation. He had already formed a connection with the Dragonkin village when he took in Pelagius and met dozes. Besides, he wasn't helping just because the two reincarnations asked him to. He also wanted to protect his hometown and carry out dozes' wishes. Hiromu was surprised by this and agreed with what Agatsuma had said earlier about Nagi being open-minded. He thanked Nagi and trusted his great spirit status. Soon after, mystical wings spread across the sky. A dragon flew majestically, and it turned out to be Hiromu. Nagi thanked him for the ride and for joining him. Hiromu said they would reach the village quickly this way. If it weren't for the battle, he would have liked to bring someone else along. Earlier, Nagi, with Hiromu standing beside him, told his people about the situation in the Dragonkin village. He promised to pull their town into this dangerous situation, but said he would be away for a long time and wanted everyone to know. At that moment, Yona stepped forward and asked Nagi to take him along. He said he could fight now since he had learned how to use the spirit sword properly. He wanted to be helpful to Nagi soon. Nagi patted Yona's head and said he knew Yona had been training every day. He saw how much stronger Yona had become, both in body and spirit. However, Nagi told him that helping didn't mean fighting with him. Instead, he asked Yona to protect the town. Yona thought for a while and agreed to protect the town in Nagi's place. Hiromu commented on how straightforward and good Yona was. Nagi said that was why he wanted to keep her away from the battlefield. He also said he felt the same way about Pelagius. The baby dragon understood what Nagi meant and started nagging him. Nagi couldn't say no to the baby dragon. Hiromu added that Pelagius was also worried about his homeland. Nagi wasn't sure if it was okay to bring Pelagius with them, but since it was the resting place of his real parent, he decided to respect his feelings. Instead, he asked Pelagius to behave and not take part in the war. He asked the dragon to keep his promise, and the baby dragon squealed, which seemed like agreement. Hiromu translated the squeal as "Yes, Papa." Nagi asked if he meant him, and Hiromu just laughed. Then he suddenly noticed something ahead. The village of the Dragonkin was coming into full view. That's the end of the recap at chapter 14. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.